Daily rules are used in Aussie timesheets to determine how the software is going to perform a shift calculation on any 24-hour window of time. The software needs daily rules to be configured before they can be scheduled, before the schedule can then be assigned to an employee. To access daily rules, click on your setup icon, then click on the daily rules icon. You can have an unlimited number of rule or shift calculations, as you can see here on the list on the left. To create a new daily rule to be able to plan out later on, click the Add button. A code is auto-generated for this rule. We can now give it a user-friendly name. This name is going to show up on our timesheets and on our reports to indicate that the employee was working using this daily rule calculation on any day. Now we need to determine whether this rule will be a flexible rule or a fixed time rule. A fixed time rule is when the employee is anticipated to start at a certain time and you don't want to count that time before their scheduled start time, or you want to have better control over their start and finish times. A flexible option is selected, where employees would come and go at any time through the day, and you want just their total hours recorded, maybe some rounding on their start and finish time, but their shift time is not set. For this option, we're going to choose a fixed time rule. Let's enter a start time. And let's enter an anticipated finish time. We can now set a start time grace period. The software at this point will not count any time worked before 9 AM. However, when the employee clocks in after 9 AM, we can specify a grace period of time where we will still be happy to count their scheduled time from 9 o'clock. For example, if we set a 5-minute grace period on their start time here, if the employee clocks at 9:04, the software will still count their time from 9 o'clock. Using this fixed time, unless we choose other options in our tabs above, the software will not count any time before 9 o'clock. So when the employee clocks at 8:30 or 8:45, the timesheets will show you that time, but the daily rule will only start calculating from the scheduled fixed time. If you're entering a night shift daily rule, be sure to choose the night shift checkbox. Now we've assigned the shift's times, let's now go to the break times tab. We can choose to define morning and afternoon tea breaks as well as a lunch break. We can indicate if these breaks happen at a certain time of day or whether they are flexible. We can also indicate if this is a paid break. For example, we can set a 10-minute paid morning tea break, a 30-minute unpaid lunch break, and a 10-minute paid afternoon tea break. And the system allows the employees to be able to use the clocks for those 3 breaks as well. You've also got the option for an auto lunch deduction without them having to use the time clock to clock off for break times. To use an auto lunch deduction, either specify it's a flexible break, and then in the time allowed, enter the value that you want automatically subtracted from the employee's total for the day. In this instance, a 30-minute lunch deduction. Now, if the employee starts at 9 and finishes at lunchtime, you might not want the 30-minute lunch break to be deducted off their total hours then, but only if they work a full day. So our minimum time worked before break calculation will mean that if we choose a 5 hours minimum time worked, the 5 hours of work has to have happened first before the 30-minute lunch break will be taken off their total. Once we've made our changes, Click Save. In our rounding tab, we can choose how we want this daily rule to round the times that they've clocked or the total hours, if any. We get the option to round the shift start time or the shift finish time, or whether we want to round their calculated total of base or overtime hours. When we choose from the drop-down selection, we can choose whether we want it to round up to a certain value, down to a certain value, or from the middle, or to the nearest. Let's round total base hours down to 15 minutes. We can also choose to have all our totals rounded down to 15 minutes. This means that employees would have to work a complete 15 minutes of value of work to be paid for that. And save. Now we can choose if there's any overtime settings applicable on this daily calculation. We can say no, we don't want any overtime calculated. We can have overtime calculated after a certain number of hours have been worked. Or we can have overtime calculated at a certain time of day. For this example, we'll choose after a certain number of hours have been worked. By default, the software assumes that all time is base hours, and we now specify after how many base hours do we then want the software to calculate overtime. In this example, we'll say that after 8 hours, we want to then go to the OT1 column, which will typically be OT 1.5 times. We can then say after how many work hours do we want time to go to the overtime 2 column. Maybe after 10 hours work, we then want that to be considered double time. We've then got options to choose the minimum overtime after. For example, if the employee works 8 hours and 3 minutes, is that overtime payable? If not, we can choose a buffer to indicate that the employee has to work past 15-minute value, for example, to be able to qualify for that overtime setting. We can say they have to work at least 15 minutes of double time before they'll get that too. We can now duplicate these settings throughout the midweek. For our weekends, our overtime rules may be different. On Saturday, for example, we might want time to start at time and a half. So we can say that after no base hours, go straight to time and a half. Then we might say that after 2 hours at time and a half, then go to double time. On Sunday, all time that may be worked could be considered double time depending on your award. So to get all of Sunday time to go to double time, just say that after no hours of base, go to time and a half, and then after no hours of time and a half, go to double time, which indicates that all time worked on the Sunday will be double time. Click Save to save that setting. Our daily rule calculation is now set up and ready. An employee is not assigned to a daily rule, but daily rules are used to plan them onto a schedule of work that the employee will be assigned to. So have a look at our schedule support solution on how to now schedule the daily rules that we've created.